Our son threw us off a cliff to keep us quiet, my wife whispered. Play dead. I spent 40 years building everything for my son, my saving, my business, my name. He repaid us by forging documents that would have put us out on the street. When my wife discovered the truth, she went pale and grabbed my hand. She leaned close in the dark and whispered something I never expected. And what she said that night changed everything. Unpopular opinion. Staying silent was the most powerful thing I ever did. Because while my son believed he had already buried us, my wife and I were already making the call that would end him. She leaned close that night and whispered 2 words I never expected to hear from her. And those 2 words became the most expensive mistake our son ever made. Before we go any further, subscribe to Revenge Handler. This channel exists for every father and grandfather who gave their best years to this family and got betrayal in return. If that hits close to home, you are exactly where you need to be. Hit subscribe right now, because what I am about to tell you, you need to hear it all the way through. My name is Gerald. I am 67 years old. I am a father. I built everything I have from nothing. This is my story. Get comfortable, because the people in this story had every single chance to do the right thing. They chose wrong every time. Drop a comment below. Make sure you are subscribed. You are going to love it here. And if you think you already know where this is going, you don't. Not even close. The envelope was sitting on the kitchen table when I came home. My wife, Eleanor, was standing at the window with her back to the door. She did not turn around. She just said, "Look at the papers, Gerald." I set down my keys. I picked up the envelope. My hands were steady at first. Then they were not. The letterhead was from a law firm I had never seen in my life. The document inside was a transfer of property rights. Our property. Our home of 31 years. And at the bottom of that document were our signatures. Except we had never signed a single thing. I looked at Eleanor. She finally turned from the window. Her eyes were dry. She was past tears. She said, "He did it. Our son did this to us." Let me take you back to where this started. I grew up with nothing worth mentioning. My father left when I was 9 years old. My mother worked 2 jobs until her hands cracked and bled every winter. I swore on everything I had that my child would never feel that kind of hollow in his chest. I kept that promise for 40 years. I started a landscaping company with a second-hand truck and a handshake from a neighbor willing to take a chance. By the time our son Marcus was in high school, we owned the house outright. The business was profitable, and we owed nobody a single dollar. I was proud of that. Eleanor was proud of that. Marcus smiled and said the right things at the right moments. He was our only child. We gave him everything we could reach. Private school, college tuition fully paid, a car at 18. When he married Sandra, we paid for the wedding without being asked. When they bought their first home, we co-signed a loan. I did not think twice about any of it. That is what you do for your children. That is what I believed a father was supposed to do. The first sign came about 3 years ago. Marcus began calling less, then visiting less. Sandra stopped returning Eleanor's calls entirely. I told Eleanor it was stress. Young couple, busy lives. I had seen it before. I wanted to believe that. I chose to believe it. Then our accountant called on a Tuesday morning. He said there was an irregularity on one of our business accounts. A transfer he did not recognize. For $1,200. Moved without explanation. I assumed it was a bank error. I called the bank directly. It was not a bank error. The transfer had been authorized using a login credential we had not touched in over a year. Someone had been inside our account. Someone who knew exactly where to look and exactly what to take. And that was just the beginning. Drop a comment below. Where are you watching from right now? And stay with me, because this story is only getting started. A father discovers his own son has been forging documents, quietly draining the life they spent 40 years building together. Gerald gave Marcus everything, his name, his business, his trust, and received betrayal wrapped in legal paperwork in return. Now, with his wife's whispered words echoing in the dark, Gerald must decide how far 2 quiet people are willing to go. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you should have been able to trust completely? Tell me in the comments. If you are just joining, you need to go back and watch from the start. because what I am about to tell you only makes sense if you know what came before. I did not sleep that night. Eleanor sat at the kitchen table until 2 in the morning. She had a yellow legal pad in front of her. She was writing everything down, every date, every phone call, every moment something had felt wrong, but we had explained it away. By the time she was done, that pad had 4 pages of notes. 4 pages. And we had missed every single one of those signs. I called our attorney, David, first thing in the morning. He told us not to touch anything, not call Marcus, not to let him know we had seen the documents. He said, "Gerald, if he knows you know, whatever he is planning accelerates. You give him nothing right now." I did not like it. Every instinct, I had said to pick up the phone and confront my son directly. But David had been my attorney for 22 years. I trusted him. So I sat on my hands, and I waited. What David uncovered over the next 10 days, I am still not entirely over. Marcus had not started with the house. The house was the end of the plan. He had started 18 months earlier. He had used our business tax ID to open a secondary line of credit in the company's name. $48,000. Drawn down over 14 months in amounts small enough not to trigger an automatic alert. He knew exactly how our accounts worked because I had taught him. I had sat him down at that same kitchen table when he was 19 years old and walked him through every number. I thought I was preparing him for the future. He was taking notes for a different reason entirely. Then came the moment I almost convinced myself I had it wrong. Marcus called on a Thursday evening. Completely normal. Warm, even. He asked how Eleanor's knee was healing after her surgery. He asked if I needed help with the truck. Said he had noticed the check engine light was on when he visited 2 months prior. He said, "Dad, Sandra and I were thinking about coming for Sunday dinner. Eleanor's pot roast. I've been thinking about it all week." I said that sounded good. I said we would see them Sunday. I hung up the phone and stood in the hallway for a long moment, and I thought, maybe David is wrong. Maybe there is an explanation. Maybe my son is still my son. Eleanor came to the doorway. She looked at my face and read it immediately. She said, "Gerald, don't." One word. That was all she needed. Sunday came. Marcus and Sandra arrived with a bottle of wine and easy smiles. We sat around the same table where I had taught him everything I knew. We ate. We laughed at old stories. And the entire time, underneath that table, Eleanor had her hand on my knee, steady, still, holding me in place. Because David had called that morning. He had found the forged signature documents. He had confirmed with a handwriting expert. And he had found something else, something that made the forgery look like a minor detail by comparison. Marcus had filed paperwork to have Eleanor declared mentally incompetent. He had been building a case for 14 months. The goal was guardianship, not just the house, not just the money, all of it, control of everything, including Eleanor herself. And he sat across from us that Sunday, eating her pot roast, smiling like a man with nothing to hide. If this is hitting close to home, give this video a like right now. You know exactly what I mean. Still with me? Good. Because this is where everything changes. I did not sleep Sunday night either. Eleanor did. That was the moment I understood something about my wife that 43 years of marriage had not fully shown me. She was not afraid. She was not broken. She was cold in a way that only someone who has made a decision can be cold. She woke up Monday morning, made coffee, sat across from me at the table and said, "We are not going to react. We are going to respond. And there is a difference." I looked at this woman. This woman I had built everything beside. And I understood why she had whispered those 2 words in the dark. Play dead. Not because we were finished. Because we were not ready yet. I called David that morning and told him we were ready to move. He had already been making calls of his own. The forged documents were enough for criminal fraud charges. The guardianship filing was enough for elder abuse under our state statutes. The fraudulent line of credit was enough for a federal wire fraud referral. David laid it out quietly, the way a man does when he wants you to understand the full weight of what he is saying. He said, "Gerald, your son did not make one mistake. He built a system, and that system is now going to be used against him piece by piece. I asked him how long. He said, "Not long, but you hold. You do not move until I tell you." The hardest part was the waiting. Marcus called twice that week. Once to ask about Thanksgiving. Once to ask if I thought any more about updating my will. He had a financial advisor he trusted. He said, someone he wanted me to meet. I said that sounded reasonable. I said I would think about it. I set the phone down and stared at the wall for a long time. 40 years of memories sat in that silence with me. Teaching him to ride a bicycle in the driveway. Sitting in a hospital waiting room when he had his appendix out at 14. Not moving from that chair for 6 hours. Watching him walk across a stage to collect a degree I had worked nights to pay for. Every one of those memories hurt now. Not because they were gone. Because he had been real in all of them. Whatever he had become, he had not always been this. And somehow that made it worse. Eleanor found me sitting there in the dark. She did not say anything for a moment. Then she sat down beside me and took my hand the way she had under that table on Sunday. Steady, still, she said, "You gave him everything a father could give. What he did with it is not your debt to carry." I nodded. I did not fully believe it yet, but I held on to it. David called on a Friday afternoon, 3 weeks after we had first seen those documents. He said the district attorney's office had reviewed the fraud case. He said the elder abuse filing was accepted. He said the handwriting expert's report was certified and admissible. And then he said the thing that changed the temperature of the room entirely. He said, "Gerald, Marcus does not know any of this is coming. Not one piece of it. And we are going to keep it that way until the moment it lands." I asked him when. He told me. I wrote the date on the legal pad Eleanor had started. Right there at the bottom of 4 pages of everything we had missed. One date. And I set the pen down. Marcus called that evening. He sounded relaxed. He talked about a vacation he and Sandra were planning. He talked about a new car he was considering. He asked if Eleanor was feeling better. I told him she was doing just fine. I told him we were both doing just fine. And we were. For the first time in 3 weeks. We actually were. We are almost at the end. Subscribe if you have not yet, because what happens next is something I have never told anyone. You stayed. Good. Because this right here is why patience is a weapon. The date David gave me was a Tuesday. I remember that clearly. Eleanor made coffee at 6 in the morning the way she always does. She set my cup on the table without a word. We sat together in the quiet for a long time. No television, no radio, just the sound of the house we had built, the one someone had tried to take from us while we were still living in it. At 9:45 that morning, 2 investigators from the district attorney's office arrived at Marcus and Sandra's home. They were not alone. David had coordinated with the bank's fraud division. A separate federal referral had already been submitted for the wire transfers. Marcus answered the door in the clothes he had slept in. He was not expecting anyone. He had no reason to be. As far as he knew, his parents were home drinking coffee and thinking about Thanksgiving. David called me at 10:15. He said, "It's done, Gerald. He's been served." I set the phone down on the kitchen table. Eleanor was watching me from across the room. I looked at her. She nodded once. That was all. No celebration. No tears. No raised voices. Just 2 old people sitting in their kitchen, in the home that was still theirs, nodding at each other across 43 years of everything. What followed was not quick. I want to be honest about that. The legal process took 11 months. There were hearings. There were attorneys on both sides. Sandra left Marcus 4 months in. She had not known the full scope of what he had done. Or at least that is what she said. I chose to believe her. It cost me nothing to believe her, and it cost her everything to stay. Marcus called me once during those 11 months. Once. He did not apologize. He asked me why I had done this to him. I held the phone. I thought about a boy on a bicycle in the driveway. I thought about a hospital waiting room and 6 hours in a chair. I thought about a stage and a degree and a father who had not moved a single inch from the front row. I said, "Marcus, I did not do anything to you. I simply stopped protecting you from yourself." He had nothing to say to that. The line went quiet, and then it went dead. The criminal fraud conviction carried a suspended sentence and 5 years of supervised probation. The fraudulent credit line had to be repaid in full out of Marcus's own accounts. The guardianship filing was struck from the record entirely. The house remained ours. Our name remained ours. Everything he had tried to quietly dismantle stood exactly where we had built it. I will tell you something I have not said out loud until now. The night after the final hearing, Eleanor and I sat on the back porch the way we used to when Marcus was small. She had her coffee. I had mine. The yard was dark and quiet. She reached over and took my hand. Not steady this time. Not still. Just the hand of a woman who was tired and relieved and present. She said, "We made it." I said, "We made it." And that was enough. That was the whole thing right there. 2 old people on a porch. Still here. Still standing. Still holding on. I did not destroy my son. I simply stopped protecting him. If this story moved you, subscribe to Revenge Handler. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And drop a comment below, because your story matters too. I will see you in the next one.